The 1960s. British lorries ruled the roads. Bedford, Foden, Leyland, ERF, Atkinson. These weren't just trucks. They were legends built by men who understood heavy haulage. But driving them was a different story. No power steering, no synchromesh gearboxes, no second chances. A 12-speed crash box that demanded perfect timing. One wrong move on a hill and you were done. These machines separated real drivers from everyone else. Today, veteran truckers talk about the 60s with a mix of pride and horror. What made these lorries so brutally difficult to drive? And why do the men who mastered them still command respect decades later? This is the story of 10 old-school lorries that tested every driver who sat behind their wheels. Number 10. Bedford TK. Let's start with Britain's workhorse. The Bedford TK launched in 1960 to replace the Bedford S-Type and became the main light truck in the UK through most of the 60s and 70s. It competed directly with the Ford D series for market share. Available with both 4 and 6 cylinder petrol and diesel engines from Bedford, Leyland and Perkins, the TK was the truck you saw everywhere. But don't mistake common for easy. The TK came with a tilt cab that made engine work simpler, but drivers still faced the same challenges as every lorry of the era. No power steering on most models, basic suspension, and like its competitors, the TK demanded driver skill. One restoration owner with a 1960 TK described it as diesel, powered with a 151-inch wheelbase. The TK served in many roles, from fire engines to military vehicles to flatbed trucks and tippers. By the time production finally ended, the TK had become one of Britain's most recognised commercial vehicles. Number 9. Leyland Octopus. The Leyland Octopus was a name that commanded respect on British roads. This 8-wheeler could carry serious weight and became what experts called the definitive British 8-wheeler lorry for most of its life. In 1962, Leyland introduced a lighter version called the 240.14R that weighed under 6 tons 1500 weight unladen, which was about 10 hundredweight less than earlier Power Plus Octopus models. The Octopus used the LAD Vista View cab in the early 60s before moving to the ergomatic cab in 1964. Weight reduction came from using a lighter rear bogie, light alloy clutch and gearbox housings, and the Leyland plastics panelled cab. After UK weights went up to 32 tons in 1964, 8-wheeler sales dropped hard and Leyland actually stopped Octopus production between 1970 and 1975. But during its prime, the Octopus was a market leader with long waiting lists for new chassis. Drivers knew if you could handle an Octopus, you could handle anything. Number 8. AEC Mammoth Major. The AEC Mammoth Major was power on wheels. The Mark V version arrived in 1958 with what people remember as a very stylish cab, built mostly by Park Royal Vehicles. AEC only built the chassis with front panels so customers could pick their own cab design. The main engine for heavy models was the AV691 unit with 11.3 litres of capacity. At 150 horsepower in 1949, this made it one of the most powerful 8-wheelers of its time. Over 6,000 of all Mark V versions were built before production ended in 1964. The 28 to 30 ton Mammoth Major came in 8x2 and 8x4 forms for tipper or haulage use. It featured the 212 horsepower A V760 diesel with transmission through either a 6-speed overdrive or 10-speed overdrive gearbox. Drivers talked about how the Mark V had no heater and no insulation for noise. But some said the 11.3 engine with a 6-speed box could top 60 miles per hour. That kind of speed in a heavy 8-wheeler required serious driving skill. Number 7. Foden S21. Now we're getting to the real character machines. The Foden S21 appeared in 1958 with a curved glass fibre cab that looked like nothing else on the road. The commercial vehicle press initially nicknamed it both Spaceship and Sputnik, but drivers called it the Mickey Mouse. This wasn't your grandfather's steam lorry. Foden had moved into diesel power, and the S21 showed they were thinking differently about truck design. But the real story was what sat behind that futuristic cab. Many S21s came with Foden's own two-stroke diesel engine, the FD6. This engine was fast but tricky. It had pretty much no torque below 1,500 RPM and topped out at 2,200, so drivers needed to keep it singing in the power band all the time. That's where the famous Foden 12-speed gearbox came in. It was basically a 4-speed crash box driving a 3-speed gear group with ratios of 3.29 to 1 reduction in low, 1 to 1 direct drive in mid, and 0.77 to 1 overdrive in high. A skilled driver could see favourable fuel usage. Someone less skilled could waste gallons making the engine struggle. The 12-speed was probably the single most significant development Foden made for the two-stroke. Number 6, ERF-LV-ERF, stood for Edwin Richard Foden, who left his family company in 1933 to build his own diesel lorries. By the 60s, ERF had built a reputation for rugged reliability with no frills. The LV cab was introduced in 1961 with a totally new design by Gerald Broadbent, first built by Beaualloy and then by J.H. Jennings. The old KV cab with its curved windscreens remained available until 1966. It was lightweight and extremely economical and found use in all types of haulage. In 1967, ERF became the first British truck maker to fit fail-safe spring brakes on LV models, and eventually all other makers followed. The ERF model 64P from the 60s had a Perkins 603546 cylinder engine with 5.8 litres producing 112 horsepower. Overall length was 25 feet or 28 feet, with a turning circle of 62 or 68 feet and gross weight of 16 tonnes. Simple, tough and respected by drivers who valued substance over style. Number 5, Atkinson Border. The Atkinson name meant quality. Based in Preston, the firm built up a fine reputation over decades with their distinctive Circle A on the radiator grille. In 1968, Atkinson gave names to their entire truck range. The Borderer was a 2-axle tractor unit. The Leader was a 3-axle tractor. The Searcher was a 3-axle rigid, and the Defender was a 4-axle rigid. But looking back, there wasn't much to a Borderer, and that's what customers really wanted. Tom Riding of W and J Riding called the Borderer fantastic because of its very simple build. His company used to add their own sleeper cabs to the back of a standard day cab Borderer. While these little sleeper pods looked rough to drivers of the time, they offered real comfort compared to sleeping across the engine hump. About 4,000 Borderers were built before the Seddon-Atkinson merger in the mid-70s. Many ended their days as hard-working shunters, and a lot entered preservation. The end users were never really bothered about frills to please the driver, but the modernised Mark II cab, introduced at the end of the 60s, gave the Borderer its lasting identity. Number 4, Scammell Routeman. Scammell specialised in the heavy end of the market. The Routeman 8-wheeler was announced in August 1960 and became available in 2 wheelbase lengths with a choice of 4 power units. 2 Gardner and 2 Leyland engines were offered. The 6LW at 112 horsepower, the 6LX at 150 horsepower, the 0.600 at 125 horsepower, and the 0.680 at 161 horsepower. The standard gearbox in all cases was a Scammell 6-speed constant mesh unit with a choice of ratios. Early versions came with Scammell's own gate change gearbox, but later versions got AEC and David Brown boxes. The chassis frame used 7.5-inch thick pressings with 3-inch flanges and a maximum depth of 12 inches. On 9.00-20 tyres, the Routeman had a dry weight of 6 tons 800 weight with a gross weight rating as a solo vehicle of 24 tons. The start of the 60s saw the introduction of the new Michelotti designed glass fibre reinforced plastic cab that became known as the cheese grater design. The Routeman showed Scammell was moving with the times while maintaining their reputation for heavy-duty reliability. Number 3. Guy Warrior. Guy Motors of Wolverhampton launched their Invincible range in 1954, based on the AEC Mammoth Major Mark III. By 1959, a lightweight model was added to the range powered by an AEC AVU470 engine and called the Warrior Light 8. It was popular with operators seeking maximum payload capacity. The Warrior Mark II was being produced even as Guy faced serious financial problems by 1960. Despite their lorry division performing well, the company entered receivership in 1961. Jaguar Managing Director Sir William Lyons acquired the company for £800,000. Guy continued successfully throughout the 1960s with the Big J series of trucks. The Guy Warrior represented British engineering during a turbulent time, with its ultra-modern cab featuring large wraparound windscreen. Introduced by 1958, the Warrior showed Guy's commitment to design. Like all lorries of its era, it lacked power steering and featured a crash gearbox, but operators valued it for keeping axle weights down while maximising what they could legally carry. The Warrior proved you could build a capable 8-wheeler without the massive weight penalty of heavier competitors. Number 2. Foden with Gardner engine. We talked about the Foden S21 with the 2-stroke engine, but many Fodens in the 60s ran Gardner engines, and that tells another story. Gardner engines were in huge demand. They were considered among the best diesel engines available for road vehicles. The problem was supply. Foden's output of trucks was basically limited to 11 vehicles per week by their ration of Gardner engines they could get. That's how much everyone wanted Gardner power. The Gardner 6LW was especially prized, but even with a good engine, the truck still had all the other 60s challenges. No heating, limited visibility, crash gearbox. One driver remembered Bedfords being quite musical vehicles in the 60s because the left-hand front bumper mounting on CA vans used to come loose and the whole bumper would swing up and down with a chirruping noise you could hear approaching before the engine. That was the reality of trucks back then. Things broke, things rattled, and you kept going. Number 1. Ford Thames Trader. Our number 1 spot goes to the Ford Thames Trader. Introduced in 1957 and produced until 1966, this forward control chassis offered payload capacities from 3 to 7 tons with short wheelbase tractive units for hauling semi-trailers. The large range used 4-cylinder petrol or diesel engines of 3.4 and 3.6 litres for models up to 3 tons. Above that weight came either a 4.8 litre 6-cylinder petrol or a 5.4 litre 6-cylinder diesel. They all used the same cab design with small variations on the grille and headlamp panels. The Thames Trader represented the challenges every 60s driver faced. No power steering, crash gearbox, basic cab comfort. But it also showed how British makers tried to offer variety and choice across different weight classes. The Thames Trader competed in a crowded market against the Bedford TK and other rivals, serving operators who needed reliable medium-duty haulage without premium prices. Like every lorry of its era, it demanded skill and strength from its drivers.